I want to start talking to you today about the mental health system.
Right.
I've talked to many county supervisors about this, especially here in Wapello County. They're worried that the more money that Wapello County puts in, that they're going to have to make up for their surrounding counties, such as Appanoose, Davis, Monroe, and Mahaska. Do you have any concerns about that?
Actually, the system that we're putting together would be for the first time to have a statewide system for delivery of mental health. It would provide, I think, more uniformity, and the state would manage and control the costs, and the state would also take over the costs gradually that the counties are presently paying. So right now, if the person is from Wapello County has to pay a certain share of that cost. The federal government pays some and the state pays some, but also the county property taxpayers have to pay some. And so we want to go to a uniform system, one that provides quality mental health services all over the state, delivered locally, but really done and managed on a statewide basis. Chuck Palmer, the director of the Department of Human Services, has been working with the bipartisan group of legislators and with a lot of citizens advisory groups over the last several months, and has what I think is a bipartisan consensus on a plan to do that. And we will take, it's about a 5-year plan, but it would start in this coming, we would expect to approve it this year, and it would begin July 1.
So when you're looking at the regions, when you're dealing with this, everybody in every county will be treated equally. So Davis County residents will pay for Davis County, Wapello County will pay for Wapello County?
Well, eventually, that's the way it is today, but you have to then determine, is the individual, now somebody may have lived in Davis County part of the time and Wapello County part of the time, so something there'd be a real battle between whose obligation is it. Eventually, we want to get away from that and say, the state's going to take over this responsibility and the state's going to pay for it. Now, we're not able to take over the entire cost of that in the first year, but we will phase that in, and we I think have $17 million the first year that's been paid for by the counties to match Medicaid money, and then it's $38 million in the second year. So that's the way we're going to go into it.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about education. You have this 10-point plan that you talked about in your Condition of the State address. The Lieutenant Governor talked about it today at Indian Hills. It's getting a lot of feedback from educators here in Wapello County. Speaking with a former superintendent, he is concerned about allowable growth for the school districts. That's not mentioned in the plan. Are you planning on addressing that in the future?
We addressed that actually last year. We provided allowable growth for the coming school year of 2%. But what we're looking at is we're going to study the whole compensation system for teachers, and Jason Glass will be appointing a task force to look at that and come up with recommendations for next year. So the budget for fiscal year 2013, allowable growth has already been set. So, and instead of setting 2014, we're going to say, no, we want to change the system, and we're going to have this task force, and they'll make recommendations, and we'll address that in 2013.
So have you committed to a number in 2014?
No, in fact, I think we're going to replace it with a whole new system. So the idea, in the past, we've just decided on a certain number, and then, but we think we want to instead have a system that's more focused on how we can attract the best teachers and reward teachers, and one that really has a systematic approach towards improving the quality of instruction. And so that's what we're looking at doing. And part of this is looking at a whole new system that has, you know, maybe 4 different levels. And it's easier for teachers, instead of having to stay in teaching for 30 years before they get to the top of the pay scale, if they have demonstrated great proficiency, to be able to move up much quicker. So that, but nevertheless, there's still a lot of questions, and people say, well, but we also look at mentor and master teachers and what their responsibilities would be. And because there's a lot of questions about what is the best way to do that, we felt that we needed to study that in more detail. So we put that off until the 2013 session. And so that's the reason why we're not going to set allowable growth for 2014, because we want to incorporate whatever changes we make there and target our resources in ways that are going to get us the best. Get us the best teachers and the best education results.
Speaking with Representative Kurt Hansen of Fairfield a couple days ago in Des Moines, he's concerned that with the way things are set up now, that the best teachers are going to be attracted to the metro areas and that the rural areas could be negatively impacted.
Well, and I think, unfortunately, when I was governor before, we had a beginning teacher salary, and we provided money under phase 1 for that, and that really helped our rural districts. And then a few years ago, the legislature discontinued that. And I think as part of our new funding formula for schools and for teachers, we need to reinstate a higher beginning teacher salary. I think that could help us attract higher achieving teachers to the rural areas. But I can't help what the legislature did when I wasn't governor, but I think that was a mistake, and I'm hopeful that next year when we address this issue of teacher compensation, part of it will be raising beginning teacher salaries, make it more attractive so that we can attract higher achievers to our rural districts as well as urban districts.
Now, another thing, you're for the longer school days and the longer school year.
That's another thing that's being studied. So those are I think that is certainly something we need to look at. If you look at the most successful school systems in the world, they have longer school years and they have longer school days. So we think that's probably something that makes sense. But again, that's not an easy thing, and it's something that's going to cost some money. So we're going to have a task force that Jason Glass will be appointing, and we're intending to address that next year. So those are the two major areas that we will not be addressing this year, but hopefully can be next year. And in the meantime, we have a major reform package that includes a lot of other changes to attract we'll just basically have better accountability, have more effective assessments, and make sure that we have a great teacher in every classroom, a great principal in every building. We have good assessments done annually, and that we make sure that teachers are, master the content as well as the delivery before they're ever put in the classroom.
Switching gears here, jobs and commercial property tax, they're basically one and the same. Yep. You lower the commercial property tax here, more jobs could come back to Iowa. The county here, Wapello County, seems to be against the current proposal that was in the House last year. There were many that were for the Senate version. Do you think that the Senate and the House can come to a compromise this year to finally get this passed?
I think the problem with the Senate version was it was not a permanent tax relief. It was only a tax credit on the first $30,000 of valuation. The problem with that is if you're a tenant, and a lot of your startup businesses are renting property, the landlord pays the initial property tax, but then under a net lease, the tenant has to basically pick it up. Right. And so the plan we put together also, we perfected it. Instead of 5 years, we're looking at an 8-year phase-in. We're also assuring local governments they're not going to lose that, but we're not going to let them get a windfall. And see, this is my biggest concern. Many of them don't want to change the law because they see this big windfall coming, because you know what happened to farmland values last year. Yeah. And because we use a 5-year rolling average on commodity prices, farmland and residential is tied to it. So it's going to go up 4% every year. So as part of this, I want to not only reduce the commercial property, I don't want them to be able to shift it to residential and ag, and so we would limit that to half what they can increase it now. And so that's really the story that's not being told, is this, and I don't think it's fair to the property taxpayers of Iowa to see for the next 5 years and even longer a 4% increase in the share of their property that's going to be subject to property tax.
Governor, my last question for you has to deal with the roads here in Southeast Iowa. I've gone up to Des Moines. I went there this past week for the condition of the state and also for the opening of the session, and your roads are beautiful in the metro. Right. You come down here and our roads aren't in the best condition. Do you feel that you would be willing to focus on the gas tax so we could have better improved roads down here, or is there another plan that the state is working on?
Well, the first thing I did is I appointed a group of citizens from all over the state to look at what the road needs were. And this is 3 different levels: counties, cities, and the state system. And they identify there's about a $215 million shortfall on an annual basis. However, We've got a new director of the Iowa DOT, Paul Trombino. He's done a great job. We had all the flooding in western Iowa. We were able to rebuild Interstate 680 in a matter of 34 days. And because we did such a good job and because it's all been done, and it's because it's flood damage, we're going to get full reimbursement for all the work we did there. Plus, he's done some other things, and I've asked him to identify at least 50 million, and I understand he's got over 60 million identified in savings through reducing duplication and administrative costs. And that money is going to make it possible for us to add about $120 million to the road fund, which will be distributed between the county, cities, and the state for this coming year. So I don't think there's a real problem for the coming year, but beyond that, there's going to be a need. I've said I'm open to looking at increasing the motor fuel user fee, which is paid by everybody that uses our roads, trucks and cars, whether they're from here, whether they're from Iowa or not. And I'm willing to consider that, but only after we've gotten the savings done, and I don't think it should be done now when you still have this many people out of work. But as we rebuild the economy in future years, I'm very willing to consider it.